It is sometimes called the silent killer. At over 640,000 deaths per year, it is the #1 cause of death in the United States. What is it, you may be wondering? Cardiovascular disease. As a health science student, I am very interested in the human body and all of the factors that affect its health. I've taken classes that have taught about this disease and all the ways it can affect the human body. For this reason, I want to inform you on cardiovascular disease, how it affects the body, and how lifestyle treatments can prevent your risk of it. If you apply the things that you learn in this speech today, you might save your life or the life of someone that you love. For this reason, I'm going to tell you about the effects of cardiovascular disease on the body and ways to prevent and treat it by eating a healthy diet, avoiding alcohol and smoking, and exercising often. First, I'd like to tell you about what exactly cardiovascular disease is. Cardio refers to the heart, while vascular refers to the vessels in the body. Therefore, cardiovascular disease means disease of the heart and the vessels. Cardiovascular disease is actually an umbrella term that encompasses many different diseases. However, there is one thing that many of the diseases that fall under cardiovascular disease have in common, and that is hypertension. Hypertension, if you've heard of it before, is the exact same thing as high blood pressure. High blood pressure, if left untreated over time, will damage the vessels and the heart. Some of the diseases that are commonly caused by hypertension that are cardiovascular diseases are a heart attack, which is where the vessels that supply the heart become blocked off, a stroke, where the vessels that supply the brain can become blocked, or heart failure, which is where the heart is unable to sufficiently supply the body with enough blood over time. You could say that these diseases are fairly common because they affect 48% of all the adults in the United States, according to the American Heart Association. However, this doesn't mean that there aren't ways to avoid or treat these diseases. The good news is that cardiovascular disease is both prevented and treated by eating a good diet and avoiding alcohol and smoking. Living a healthy lifestyle takes on a whole new meaning when you're considering the health of your heart and your vessels. Let's talk about saturated fat for a moment. It's found commonly in the typical American diet, which includes pizza, hamburgers, butter, pretty much anything that's really tasty probably has saturated fat in it. It's not to say that you can't eat saturated fat, but it's the constant, consistent, and excessive intake of saturated fat that can lead to cardiovascular disease. An article from the Scientific American, which is a magazine that writes science-based articles, stated that saturated fat is the most prevalent type in the American diet. It increases cholesterol in the blood, which leads to plaque, which leads to hypertension, which leads to cardiovascular disease. I'll take a moment right now to explain what plaque buildup is if you haven't heard of it already. So plaque buildup is when you start to develop mineral and fat deposits in the vessel lining in your body. And when this happens, it decreases the radius of your blood vessel, which can increase your blood pressure. If it helps you to imagine this, think of a hose with water coming out of it. If you were to squeeze on that hose, the radius of the inside is going to become smaller, which means that the water coming out will come out at a higher pressure. The same idea applies to your vessels. As the radius becomes smaller because of plaque buildup, you increase your risk of hypertension and cardiovascular disease. Another way you can treat and prevent cardiovascular disease is by simply moderating your diet in other ways. For example, there's a diet called the DASH diet. This stands for Dietary Approaches to Stopping Hypertension. This diet emphasizes high vegetables, high fruits, high potassium, lots of fish and omega-3s, and avoiding saturated fats and salt. This diet has also been shown to decrease blood pressure and decrease bad fats, like LDLs, if you've ever heard of those. In addition, it is very important that you avoid alcohol and smoking. I know there are some articles out there that claim that a couple glasses of alcohol occasionally are good for you, but I'm here to tell you to just avoid it. Dr. Kenneth McCommell, who is a doctor and associate professor of medicine at Harvard University, says that intake of 3 or more drinks per day clearly increases blood pressure, and smoking is clearly linked to the increased risk of nearly all forms of cardiovascular disease. So it's plain and simple, just avoid alcohol and smoking because, like he said, it's clear that it increases your risk of cardiovascular disease. Furthermore, there's one simple lifestyle adjustment that you can do to avoid cardiovascular disease or treat it, and that is by exercising. We're told throughout our lives that exercise is very important and that we need to do this and that. And I'm here today to tell you that cardio-focused exercise is some of the most important exercise that you can get. This is the kind of exercise that will get your heart pumping. And the reason that this is good is because it helps your heart to deliver blood and oxygen more efficiently to your extremities. It decreases your blood pressure, and it's also been shown to increase HDLs, which are good fats. Now, you may be asking yourself, what kind of exercise do I need to do? Do I need to go to the gym for lots of time? What should I do? Well, the good news is that according to the American Heart Association, you just need to get 30 minutes of moderate exercise every day that is comparable to going for a brisk walk. Some other examples I can think of would be maybe playing frisbee with your family, maybe doing an at-home workout that you can find on YouTube, or maybe even doing some squats while you're watching Netflix. The next time you're considering driving to get a snack to eat or going to the grocery store, maybe you could walk there instead and get some exercise in because you're doing yourself a favor right now and in the future. Though cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death at over 640,000 people per year, you don't need to become another one of its statistics. Through eating a healthy diet, avoiding alcohol and smoking, and exercising, this disease is reasonably preventable. What will you do now to prevent this disease? Will you eat less milkshakes? Maybe exercise more? Consider your diet? It's time for us to take matters into our own hands to defeat this silent killer.